Hi, welcome to Night Science Stories. Tonight we will drift through a quiet journey about water, trees, clouds, and the soft weather they create. Settle in. Let your breath find a slow and comfortable rhythm. I will speak gently and steadily while we follow a drop of water from the soil to the sky and back again. If you fall asleep along the way, that is perfectly fine. The forest will keep telling its story in a calm whisper. Imagine a single leaf resting in the evening air. On its surface, there is a thin, shimmering world where air and water meet. The air is cooler now, and the leaf releases a little more moisture. If we could look closer, we would see tiny openings on the underside of the leaf. They are called stomata. Each one is bordered by a pair of guard cells that swell or relax to open and close the pore. When the sun is up and the plant is ready to work, many of these pores open. Carbon dioxide flows inward, water vapor flows outward. This exchange powers life inside the leaf. Inside the leaf, the space between cells is moist and nearly saturated with water vapor. The air outside is usually drier. Nature always follows gradients. Water moves from where there is more of it to where there is less. So, a stream of invisible vapor slips out through the pores and into the air. That stream has a name. We call it transpiration. When we include evaporation from the soil and wet bark and from droplets resting on leaves, we use a longer word. Evapotranspiration. It sounds complex, but the idea is simple. The forest breathes water. A mature tree may lift and release dozens of liters of water in a warm day. A whole forest can release a river of vapor that you cannot see but you can feel if you stand beneath the canopy on a summer afternoon. The air is more humid, the light is softer, your skin senses a thin veil of coolness. Also, this breath is not reckless. Trees sense light, temperature, and dryness. On dry days, many species narrow their pores to conserve water while still taking in enough carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. This is quiet regulation. It keeps the plant safe and shapes the local air. The space around a leaf has its own tiny weather. There is a boundary layer, a cloak of air that hugs the surface and slows the wind. Within this gentle layer, the leaf warms a little in sunlight and water vapor gathers. If a breeze stirs the boundary layer, vapor is carried away more quickly, and the leaf releases more. If the air is still, vapor accumulates and the gradient becomes smaller, so the flux eases. The forest, with many leaves overlapping, creates countless small pockets like this. All together, they make a soft breath that rises above the canopy. When evening comes, many stomata close. The breath slows and the forest rests, yet even now some moisture eases into the air, especially from damp surfaces. By morning, dew may appear at the edge of the leaf as the cooling night brings air to its saturation point. This is the first glimmer of the cycle, from soil to leaf, from leaf to air, from air to cloud, a quiet pulse that repeats every day. Water has a long climb inside a tall tree. There is no pump in the trunk and there are no moving parts that we can see. Yet water rises from the roots toward the leaves with steady resolve. The explanation begins with the way water molecules hold to one another. They are cohesive. They also cling to the walls of narrow tubes. That is adhesion. Together, cohesion and adhesion support columns of water in very thin conduits inside the wood. These conduits are called xylem. They are like a bundle of fine straws, each one a tiny pathway from root to crown. When the sun warms a leaf and stomata open, water evaporates inside the leaf tissues. That evaporation lowers the pressure in the xylem that feeds the leaf. Imagine that a small pool develops at the top of a long rope of water. Cohesion transmits that pull downward. The column does not snap because the molecules hold each other. The roots feel that pull and draw more water from the soil. The entire system is continuous from soil pore to leaf surface. This is called the cohesion and tension mechanism. It operates quietly and continuously as long as the column remains intact. Tree species have different xylem designs. Some have many small conduits that are resistant to breaks. Others have larger ones that carry more water but are more vulnerable to bubbles. A break in the column is called cavitation. The tiny bubble that forms is called an embolism. Trees have ways to limit and repair such breaks. Some generate root pressure during cool nights that helps refill segments. Others grow new xylem as the season progresses. The details are subtle, but the result is simple. Day after day, water moves reliably from dark soil to bright leaves. In that movement, the tree links the earth and the sky. Minerals dissolved in the water are carried upward and used for growth. Sugars made in the leaves move back down through another tissue called phloem to feed roots and wood. The tree stands as a bridge between deep time in the soil and the daily rhythm of light above. You can think of every breath of vapor from a leaf as the last step in a long, invisible ascent that began as a quiet sip in the ground. When water evaporates, it absorbs energy from its surroundings. The energy does not raise the temperature. It is used to change liquid water into vapor. This is called latent heat because evaporation consumes heat without producing a temperature rise. A leaf that transpires is a natural cooler. Touch the air in a shaded grove on a warm day and you feel the result. The air is cooler and kinder to your skin. The sound is softer. Even the light seems to slow down. A forest cools in two ways. It blocks direct sunlight with its canopy and it moves heat into the air as vapor. The first way is obvious. Shade removes the sharpness from midday light. The second way is steadier and more delicate. As each leaf evaporates a little water, the forest transfers energy into the phase change, and that energy sails away with the rising vapor. The surrounding air temperature drops a little. That small change matters. It brings the air closer to its dew point. It shapes the growth of the warm afternoon boundary layer above the trees. It can make the difference between air that remains clear and air that begins to grow cotton like puffs of cloud. People feel this cooling in cities too. A group of trees along a street can lower the afternoon temperature there compared with nearby concrete. The relief is not only shade, it is the silent work of countless stomata that pass water into the air. At night, a well-watered grove often stays a touch warmer than open ground because the canopy slows the loss of heat to the dark sky. In this way, a stand of trees nudges both the day and the night toward comfort. The result is a gentle climate around the trunks and leaves. This comfort is not dramatic. It is the difference between restless and calm. Transpiration also influences the touch of the air. As relative humidity rises a little, your skin loses moisture a little more slowly, and your breath feels less dry. The voice of the forest becomes more intimate. You can hear birds a little closer, insects a little farther away. This is more than a feeling. The composition of the air shifts. It holds more water that came from sap and leaf. That extra vapor is not wasted. In time, it will meet small particles in the air and gather into droplets. The first steps toward cloud have already been made. When rain arrives, it does not fall straight to the ground in a forest. The canopy receives it first. Leaves and branches hold a thin film of water. Some is caught in cups formed by leaves or bark. Some slides along petioles or stems. Some drips from tips. In tropical forests, many leaves end in narrow points that help water flow away quickly. People call these drip tips. They limit the time the leaf stays wet and may reduce the chance that fungi grow on the surface. Water held on the canopy is called intercepted rainfall. Interception matters because intercepted water can evaporate back to the air before it ever touches soil. On a long, light rain, a forest can return a meaningful share of the water to the sky in this way. Part of the storm becomes a second pulse of vapor and later may feed other clouds or a later shower. On heavier storms, the canopy soon becomes saturated and begins to release water downward in sparkling threads. That portion that falls through gaps is called throughfall. Water that runs along trunks and branches and spirals down the bark is called stem flow. Throughfall and stem flow deliver water to the soil at different spots and different rates. The forest thus paints the ground with a fine pattern of wet and less wet patches. This pattern softens the impact of a storm. The canopy slows the drops. The litter layer of leaves and twigs cushions the soil. The result is less splash and less erosion when the rain stops. Tiny beads remain on needles and leaves. They slowly evaporate into the air. If a breeze moves the branches, droplets launch and become mist for a moment, then vanish. Even after the cloud passes, the forest continues to release water as vapor, returning a gentler version of the storm to the sky. If you stand beneath the trees during a slow rain, you can hear these different paths. Fine patter, soft runs along bark, occasional large drops that find a path at last. Each sound is a clue to how the storm is being sorted and softened by wood and leaf. It is a cradle for water on its way back upward. Forests have a scent that feels clean and alive. That scent comes from a family of molecules released by leaves, needles, and bark. These molecules are called volatile organic compounds. Common ones in forests include isoprene and a group called monoterpenes. On bright days, many trees release more of them, sometimes to protect their leaves from heat and light, sometimes as part of normal metabolism. In the air, these compounds react with sunlight and with oxidants. Over time, they can become less volatile and begin to condense onto tiny particles. These particles are part of what people call secondary organic aerosol. Aerosol particles are important because cloud droplets need a surface to begin forming. Pure water vapor in clean air resists condensing unless it finds a seed. A small particle provides that seed. Water molecules gather there and a droplet begins. In regions downwind of large forests, a share of the seeds for clouds come from the oxidation products of forest scents. The Blue Ridge in North America looks slightly blue on summer days because of light scattered by fine particles formed from tree emissions. That same haze that softens the view also feeds the birth of small droplets in clouds. The influence is gentle and local. Forest air is not the only source of cloud seeds. Sea salt from breaking waves and dust from dry soils and soot from combustion all contribute. Yet the forest provides a stream of particles that waxes and wanes with the rhythm of light and temperature. On many afternoons, this is enough to tip the balance so that small, fair weather clouds appear. They decorate the sky above the canopy and shade the leaves for a time. After sunset, the chemistry slows, emissions ease, and the particles drift and settle and are washed out by later rain. The process resets for the next day. The scent of a pine stand after rain feels especially fresh. Some compounds wash from needles and bark. Some aerosols are scavenged by drops on the way down. This cleanup leaves the air clear for a while. As the sun returns, emissions resume and the cycle begins again. This dance of chemistry and light gives the forest a way to write in the sky with a very fine pen. Besides the gases and the molecules that form new particles, forests also send bits of life into the air. Pollen grains lift on warm currents. Spores of fungi rise from the forest floor and drift across clearings. Bacteria from leaves can become airborne as well. These tiny travelers are called primary biological particles. They are not uniform. Some are large and fall quickly. Some are small and can remain in the air for a long time. These biological particles can influence clouds in two ways. Some act as cloud condensation seeds, just like other aerosols. A few can also act as special seeds for ice. Ice-forming particles are rare compared with ordinary condensation seeds. Certain bacteria and fragments of plant tissue have surfaces that encourage ice to begin at temperatures that are not extremely cold. When such a particle reaches a cloud, it may help an ice crystal start. That crystal can grow and change the balance inside the cloud. It may enhance the growth of droplets around it or encourage the cloud to produce precipitation sooner. The role of biological particles in rainfall varies with region and season. On the edge of a forest after a dry spell, the first rain can wash spores from surfaces and release a burst of bioaerosols as drops splash on leaves and soil. Afterward, the air may contain more biological seeds for a time. In remote basins where other particles are scarce, the share from life can be meaningful. Near cities where many particles exist, the forest contribution is one voice in a large chorus. The details are still being studied, but the picture that emerges is calm and clear. The forest releases more than water vapor. It releases small seeds of structure that help vapor become cloud. When you look up and see a delicate, slightly textured cloud deck over a green landscape, you may be seeing the fingerprint of countless leaves and tiny forest organisms. Their presence does not shout. It simply nudges the sky toward formation and toward release. Above a forest, the air does not slide in a simple flat sheet. The canopy has a texture that roughens the flow. Leaves and branches grab the wind, create small rotating eddies, and toss parcels of air upward. This mixing helps carry water vapor away from the canopy. It also brings slightly drier air down to meet the leaves. The exchange keeps transpiration going and spreads coolness around. The color of the canopy matters too. Darker leaves absorb more sunlight than pale grass or dry soil. Absorbed energy warms the surface layer of air just above the treetops in the morning. At the same time, transpiration uses some of that energy to evaporate water, which cools the leaves. A delicate balance forms. Sensible heat warms parcels of air and gives them buoyancy. Latent heat cools the surface and adds moisture to those parcels. As the sun climbs, the layer of air that is mixed by turbulence grows deeper. Gentle upward motion becomes easier. Small clouds begin to appear where the lift is greatest and where enough water vapor has gathered. On some landscapes, this contrast between forest and nearby open land can also set up a local circulation that resembles the familiar sea breeze. During the day, one area warms more than the other and air rises there. Lower air flows in from the cooler side. At night, the pattern can reverse as one surface cools more quickly. Where forests remain broad and unbroken, the pattern is more about roughness and turbulence than sharp temperature contrast. In either case, the net effect is that air above trees is stirred and carried upward, loaded with moisture that leaves provide. The idea is not that forests conjure a storm by themselves, it is that they create the conditions in which a modest push from sunlight can lift moist air. Think of the canopy as a textured launch pad that hands parcels of air to the sky. 1,000 small hands, all at once, every bright day. The result is a sky that ripens from clear to speckled to softly towering. On a typical warm day above a broad forest, the sky starts pale and quiet. As the sun rises, small puffs appear. They look like sheep in a blue pasture. Each one marks a place where warm, moist air has risen and cooled just enough for water to condense. The smallest puffs are shy. They form and fade within minutes. When the surface continues to send moisture and heat upward, some puffs grow. They become cauliflower-like with sharp edges that shine. These are growing cumulus clouds. Inside a growing cloud, tiny droplets form on aerosol seeds. They collide and merge. They ride upward in the gentle current. Some clouds stay modest and drift away. Others reach a level where the air is colder and the droplets freeze. Ice crystals form and grow at the expense of droplets through differences in vapor pressure. This mixed process with both liquid and ice helps rain or soft hail to develop. In warm clouds where freezing does not occur, a shower can still form as larger drops grow by collecting smaller ones until they are heavy enough to fall. Often in forests, the daily cycle is soft. A few clouds grow taller in mid-afternoon, cast a wandering patchwork of shade, and then release a brief shower that smells of resin and soil. After the rain, sunlight returns and steam rises from leaves. Birds call from new places. The air feels washed. The forest has sent moisture upward for hours, and the sky has returned part of it as clean water. There is a reason the smell is special. Rain taps the scents held in soil and on bark. Compounds in the ground rise when drops strike and bubbles burst. This gives the famous smell after rain. The word people use for it is petrichor. In a forest, the scent carries hints of leaf oils and wood. It is gentle and ancestral, and it seems to slow the mind. As evening comes, the base of the clouds lifts, the air cools, and quiet returns. There are places where cloud touches the trees with such constancy that the trees drink from the sky even when it does not rain. These are cloud forests. They often sit on mountain slopes where moist air from lowlands is lifted by the terrain. As the air rises, it cools and the water inside reaches saturation, forming a persistent mist or a low cloud bank. Leaves, twigs, and the moss that drapes branches collect tiny droplets from this passing cloud. The process is called cloud-water interception, and some call the resulting water occult precipitation, which simply means hidden rain. In these forests, needles and fine leaves act like nets. Droplets strike and stick, then merge and fall. Trunks streak with dark lines where water has flowed for hours from branch to branch. The contribution to the water budget can be important, especially during seasons when regular rain is scarce. Overnight, fog can bathe the forest so thoroughly that by morning the ground shines as if there had been a gentle shower. In the afternoon, as the sun illuminates the slope, the cloud lifts a little and the captured water evaporates, adding to local humidity and feeding the thin veil that hovers over the canopy. Epiphytes play a special role here. These are plants that grow on other plants without taking nourishment from them. Orchids, ferns, and thick mats of moss can cover branches and trunks. They increase the surface area that captures droplets, and they hold water like sponges. Small animals and insects live within these hanging gardens, and their life depends on the steady delivery of moisture from moving fog. The forest carries the memory of clouds within itself. Cloud forests are fragile. Their height on the mountainside is controlled by air temperature and by the moisture supply from upslope winds. A small change in either can lift the cloud layer and dry the band of trees that once collected mist. But on a calm night, as you listen to the soft hiss of moving cloud across leaves, the science becomes a cradle. Wind flows, air cools, water condenses, and the trees drink from the sky. Beneath our feet, the forest holds a second sky in the soil. Roots travel through pores and along fractures, and water moves with them. After a rain, the litter layer cushions the ground, and the topsoil accepts the gift. Instead of rushing away in a sheet, much of the water sinks and spreads. It fills pores between grains. It moves downward until it meets layers that slow it and channels it sideways toward a stream. This slow movement that sustains flow days or weeks after a storm is called base flow. You can hear it in the steady murmur of a creek that does not fail in dry weather. Soil rich in organic matter functions as a sponge. It holds water and air together and offers both to roots. Creatures that live in soil dig passages and leave spaces when they decay. Roots themselves create channels. When they die, the channels remain and become paths for water in the next storm. In this way, the forest engineers its own plumbing over many seasons. The sponge does more than store. It moderates. It takes the sharp peak off a flood and releases water gradually to plants and streams. Around trees, water moves in quiet pulses, pulled up on warm days and released back to the ground on cool nights. Some trees share water within the forest through a process called hydraulic redistribution. When the upper soil dries but deeper layers remain moist, roots can pull water from below at night and release some of it into the shallow soil through fine roots. Neighboring plants can then benefit the next day. In other settings, when the deep soil is dry but the surface is wetted by a brief shower, roots may move a little water downward into safer storage zones. These shifts do not produce a river by themselves. They produce stability. They keep the neighborhood of roots in a comfort range where growth can continue. The underground world also helps shape the air above. By feeding steady transpiration during long, warm spells, stored soil water ensures that the canopy continues to release vapor. That vapor feeds the afternoon clouds. When dry periods lengthen, trees reduce transpiration to protect themselves, and the rhythm of the local sky changes. The link is delicate but real. Soil, moisture, roots, and canopy growth together write the music of the small climate over the forest. It is a music of patience. If you sit near a forest stream after rain, you can feel the story in the air. There is a softness to the breeze that moves through ferns and over stones. The sound is slow and repetitive. The scent is clean. Somewhere uphill, water is sliding through a matrix of soil and roots, finding its way toward this channel. Somewhere closer to the ridge, leaves are drying and returning their film of water to the air. Clouds thin. A bit of sunlight touches the water and the day exhales. Now let the whole picture assemble in your mind. A tree drinks from the earth and breathes to the sky. A million leaves release invisible streams that gather and rise. Scented molecules oxidize and join as tiny seeds, and droplets form around them. Pollen and spores drift and offer surfaces. The canopy lifts air, and the air answers by building the lambs of cloud. Puffs become towers, towers share rain, and rain slides through soil to keep the cycle steady. Fog arrives and wraps the forest with a hidden shower and moves on. Everything is linked by patience and by small forces that repeat hour after hour, day after day. As you rest, the forest continues. The leaf breathes, the trunk lifts water, the air cools a little where the canopy stands. The canopy sorts rain and returns some of it to the sky. The scents of resin and flower and bark write fine lines in the air that help the next cloud begin. The unseen seeds of life become seeds of droplets. The rough surface of the treetops helps the air rise. Clouds gather and fall apart, and sometimes give their gift back to the ground. The soil keeps a reservoir for the next warm day. You do not need to remember the names. You only need to feel the slow loop from earth to sky and back. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. Picture a bead of water gliding along a leaf. It pauses at the tip, then lifts as a breath of air carries it away as vapor. It meets a tiny particle and becomes a bead again, many meters above the canopy. It joins countless others and drifts with the wind. The bead falls as a raindrop. It touches a branch and slides into a groove in the bark and reaches the ground as a thread. It seeps into soil and moves toward a root and disappears upward once more. The bead has taken a journey that has no hurry and no sharp corners. The journey is what makes the forest a maker of gentle weather. Picture the map of a great forest seen from high above. Imagine a soft ribbon of air that leaves the canopy carrying the scent of green and the gift of vapor. This ribbon moves with the wind for many hundreds of kilometers. It bends around hills and follows the curve of a valley. It crosses a plain where crops and grasslands drink from the air and give some of the water back. Far away, the ribbon meets rising ground or a zone where warm air lifts. Clouds swell and release a shower. People on that distant field feel rain that began its journey as breath from leaves. This idea is often called a flying river. It is not a single stream, but a moving field of moist air, renewed hour by millions of tiny pores. Over a basin like the one that holds the great tropical forest, this movement is especially strong. The season of rains there does not arrive all at once from the sea. Moisture enters from the ocean, and then the forest lifts it, returns it to the air, and sends it onward again. Day after day, a portion of the rainfall is reused and pushed farther inland on steady winds. Where the terrain rises, the moist flow is lifted and clouds bloom. In this way, a continent is stitched together by water that travels in the sky. The picture is delicate. Winds change, and so do the places where clouds form. Yet the memory of yesterday remains inside the air. The vapor that rose from the canopy is still present a day later. It is a traveler that has yet to fall. You can sense this when you walk from a bare field into a deep grove on a warm afternoon. The grove has made its own weather. The same thing happens at a broader scale. A forest makes weather that can reach beyond its borders, and when that weather meets the right lift, it comes back down as gentle rain. When rain falls on a forest, not all of it is new water from the sea. Some of it has already been part of a cloud over the land, fallen and returned to the air. Scientists call this the recycling of precipitation. The exact share that is recycled changes from place to place and from season to season. Over wet interiors of continents, the share can be meaningful. Near coasts where ocean air is abundant, the share is smaller. The forest does not need precise numbers to act. It simply works with what is present and returns a portion of each storm back to the sky. Think of a series of days. On the first day, moist air arrives from far away and the forest receives a generous rain. The canopy catches a film of water, the soil drinks deeply, and the stream murmurs with new life. The next morning the sun warms the leaves, vapor rises, seed particles drift up from needles and bark, and small clouds begin again. Later that day, a shower returns some of the previous rain to the ground, and a part of that shower is sent back to the air before evening. The cycle repeats. Each day, the landscape keeps a little and gives a little. The giving is not waste. It is a gift to tomorrow. This quiet turning of water smooths the rhythm of weather. It softens dry spells by feeding clouds after several sunny days. It takes the sharp edges off a storm by letting the canopy capture and slowly release part of its water back to air. In the language of feelings, the forest makes the mood of the sky less sudden. It brings a kind of patience to the air above it. That patience is one reason that living near trees feels gentle in summer and calm after rain. There is a bold idea that tries to explain an even deeper influence of forests on the path of moisture. It suggests that large and healthy tree cover can create pressure patterns that draw moist air from the ocean farther inland than would otherwise occur. The proposed chain of cause begins with strong evaporation and condensation over the forest. Condensation of vapor into tiny droplets removes water from the gas phase and may slightly lower the pressure in the column of air. In theory, this pressure change could help guide winds toward the forest, adding a steady pull that brings more moisture from the sea. This idea is known as the biotic pump. It is an attractive picture because it gives the living cover of the land a clear and active voice in shaping the flow of air from coast to interior. It also remains a subject of discussion. Some parts of the chain are well grounded, like the strong evaporation over leafy regions and the way condensation redistributes energy in the atmosphere. Other parts are still debated, especially how large and persistent the pressure effects are in the real and changeable sky. Different studies come to different conclusions depending on the place they examine and the methods they use. For our evening journey, the lesson is one of humility and care. A forest certainly returns moisture to the air, seeds clouds, and shapes local flows. Whether it also drives a large-scale pull on ocean air may depend on details of geography and season that are still being explored. It is good to hold both truths at once. The forest is powerful in small daily ways that we can feel and see. The larger picture is still being painted by many hands. In the meantime, the rain on the leaves is real, the cool shade is real, and the calm that settles after a shower is real. Not every green landscape is a closed canopy forest. In many regions, there is a graceful balance between woodlands and tall grasslands. People call these open lands savannas. Trees and grasses share the space according to soil, fire, grazing, and above all, water. There seems to be a threshold behavior in some places. When tree cover drops below a certain range, shade diminishes, the ground dries faster, and the air over the land grows warmer and drier in the afternoon. Grasses thrive, and the system leans toward open plains. When tree cover increases beyond that range, shade and evaporation rise, the surface cools a little, and humidity increases. Young trees have a better chance to grow, and the system leans toward denser cover. These thresholds are not switch-like in a single season. They are the result of slow feedbacks that run through years and decades. Fire frequency matters, grazing patterns matter, so does the depth of roots and the timing of rains. In some landscapes, two stable states can exist under the same climate. One state is an open savanna with scattered trees and a wide sky. The other is a closed canopy with a dark interior and a steady breath of moist air. A small change in 1 year may not tip the balance, but consistent changes over many years can lead the land to settle in one state or the other. From the point of view of the cycle of water, the difference between these states is quiet but important. A closed canopy returns more vapor to the air each afternoon and smooths the microclimate under its leaves. An open savanna returns less vapor and allows more sharp heating of the surface, which encourages different cloud patterns. Both states can be beautiful and rich in life. Each writes a different rhythm into the daily sky. Understanding that rhythm helps us appreciate why the same region can look and feel so different under slightly different histories of water and fire. Cities are made of stone, brick, glass, and pavement. These surfaces store heat in the day and release it at night. On hot afternoons, the air among buildings can feel restless and dry. Now, place a grove of trees in this setting. Under the canopy, light is gentler and the air eases. Leaves shade the ground from direct sun. They also move heat into vapor as they breathe. The effect is not drama, it is relief. Walk into a park on a summer day and you can measure the difference with your skin. Your breath becomes slower. The skin on your face feels less surrounded by hot air. The mechanical sounds of the city move to the background and the sounds of leaves and small birds come forward. That relief comes from two simple actions. Shade blocks the sharp heating of sunlight on surfaces. Transpiration uses energy to move water into the air rather than to raise temperature. Together, they lower the feel of the air by a few precious degrees in the shade, and by a little more when a breeze presses canopy air into a nearby street. At night, trees change the mood in another way. Their leaves and branches slow the rate at which the ground loses heat to the open sky. Under the canopy, nights can be slightly warmer in cool seasons and slightly cooler in hot ones. This moderation improves comfort and reduces the swing of temperatures that strain bodies and machines. The park becomes a small climate of its own within the city. It keeps a pouch of moisture and releases it steadily. In this pocket, the cycle of evaporation and cloud building that we have followed all evening takes place on a miniature stage, and anyone who sits on a bench can be part of it. The cycle of water in a forest follows the seasons like a simple song with verses that repeat. In spring, in temperate lands, buds open and young leaves begin to take in light. Stomata open more often and the stream of vapor strengthens. Clouds respond on fair days with a touch more texture in the afternoon. The forest floor clears of snow and the soil awakens, releasing the water that winter stored. The air smells of resin and new wood. Summer is the time of full breath. Leaves are at their largest and the canopy is thick. Transpiration peaks on long, bright days. Each afternoon, the mixed layer of air above the treetops deepens and gently rising currents carry moisture upward. On many days, small cumulus clouds appear and move slowly across the sky. Short showers visit in late afternoon, and the nights hum with insects. In some regions, a consistent cycle sets in where mornings are clear, afternoons bring shade under soft towers, and twilight smells of rain on warm bark. Autumn is a time of ease. In many species, the leaves begin to turn and then fall. The stream of vapor from the canopy weakens. In evergreen stands the pace slows, but does not stop. The air takes on longer nights and deeper cooling. Clouds ride higher and are slower to gather. Rains arrive in longer waves. In winter, deciduous trees rest. Transpiration is small and comes mostly from evergreen needles and from water that evaporates from wet surfaces after storms. The forest does not fall silent. It simply breathes in a shorter line and waits for spring to lengthen the song again. In the tropics, the rhythm may follow wet and dry seasons rather than warm and cold. Yet the feeling is the same. The forest opens and closes the throttle of vapor, and the sky listens. A young forest and an old forest can stand side by side and share the same sky, yet their inner lives are different. Young stands often grow fast, their leaves are bright, and their demand for water is strong when light and soil allow it. Their roots may be shallower and their canopy thinner. Old stands have deeper architecture. Some trees reach great height and anchoring roots. The canopy can be layered with gaps and patches of light. The floor holds a thicker litter and the soil has a longer memory of many seasons. These differences shape how water moves. Deep roots in older stands can reach moisture that lies beyond the reach of a young tree. This allows transpiration to continue during spells when the surface soil is dry. The litter layer in an old stand can soak up storms like a cushion and release water slowly, feeding a steady trickle to streams after rain. The tall and uneven canopy roughens the air more and can promote a richer pattern of small updrafts that seed small clouds. Young forests bring vigor. They pull carbon fast from the air and they thicken the green cover that feeds local humidity. Old forests bring stability. They are reservoirs of water in wood and soil, and they temper sharp changes. Both stages are part of the long life of a landscape. Over centuries, a region may pass through many rotations of youth and maturity. Through it all, the connection of soil to cloud remains. The music changes its tempo, but keeps the same key. Sometimes on a broad plain, an afternoon becomes a stage for gentle thunder. The day begins with a light breeze and a few cotton clouds. As the sun climbs, the surface warms and the air rises in soft columns. Moisture from the land gathers in these columns. Above a certain level, the air is cooler and the rising parcels release their water as droplets. The cloud grows, the top spreads like an anvil, and the base darkens a little. The sound of distant thunder is not sharp. It rolls like a slow drum as the highest towers brush the level where ice forms and small pellets begin to fall within the cloud. Under the cloud, the world grows still for a moment. Leaves turn their pale sides to the sky. Birds find a branch that feels safe. The first drops are large and spaced apart. They tap the soil and the scent of earth rises. Then the rain settles into a steady curtain. It lasts only a short while, perhaps 20 minutes. The air cools by a few degrees. The sound of falling water masks everything else. When the shower passes, the sun returns with a softer light. Steam rises from the ground, and threads of water move along the bark. These small storms owe their life to the steady delivery of moisture from the land and to the afternoon lift that the warm surface gives the air. A deep forest adds to both. It breathes water into the lower sky and it roughens the surface so that rising begins more easily. In places where such storms are common, summer afternoons feel like breathing. In, out, clear, cloud, rain, clear again. Each step is kind to the senses. Each step helps the soil, and the leaves and the air share their gifts. The sound of rain is a friend to sleep. It is even and soft, yet never exactly the same from one moment to the next. Your mind can predict the next instant of the sound without needing to chase it. There are no sharp surprises. The ear settles into the pattern and the body follows. Scientists sometimes describe comforting sounds as a kind of colored noise where energy is balanced across lower and higher tones in a way that feels natural. The shush of rain and the murmur of wind through leaves share this quality. Different kinds of rain write different songs. A light drizzle on broad leaves makes a slow, velvety whisper. A steady shower on conifers makes tiny percussive clicks that blend into a hush. A heavy downpour on a lake makes a soft roar that has no edges. When a breeze moves the canopy, drops gather and fall in small cascades. After the storm ends, the remaining beads release themselves one by one from needles and twigs. The forest continues to sing in a diminishing rhythm that invites the listener to rest. When you listen to these sounds while lying still, your breath often falls into step with them. The rhythm lengthens. The muscles in your neck and shoulders loosen. The mind relents. This is not magic. It is a body following a steady signal that says safe and constant. In the forest, this signal is made by water and leaf. In your room, it can be made by a recording or by the rain itself on the roof. Either way, the message is the same. The world is moving forward in a calm way. You are permitted to let go. Let us gather every thread into one final picture. A tree rises from soil that stores the memory of many rains. Roots find water in hidden paths. That water travels in slender vessels upward to leaves that spread like hands to the light. Tiny pores open. Vapor slips out and carries away a little heat. The air becomes cooler and more moist. Molecules from leaf and bark rise and change and join with others to form seeds for droplets. Pollen and spores drift and add their own forms. The canopy stirs the air and lifts it. Above the leaves, small clouds appear and grow. Later in the day, a shower returns, and the cycle is complete for now. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a clearing just before evening. The sun is low. A breath of wind carries the scent of resin and earth. Across the canopy, small domes of cloud are drifting somewhere far downwind. The same vapor that you feel on your face will fall as a quiet rain on fields and gardens. Somewhere upwind, other trees have sent you a share of their breath. The sky is a commons for water. The forest is one of its caretakers. Now imagine a single drop taking the full journey. It sits in a pore of soil under a fern. A root hair finds it and welcomes it inside. It rises slowly through wood as the day begins. It reaches a leaf and becomes vapor. It meets a tiny particle and becomes a droplet again in a cool parcel of air. It rides the wind and later falls as rain on a different slope. It slips down the bark and into the litter. It moves through the sponge of soil toward a stream. It pauses in a quiet pool under stones. At night, it returns to the shallow soil through fine roots. At dawn, the rise begins again. There is no hurry in this path. There is only rhythm and return. If your eyes grow heavy, you can leave the cycle to run without you. Trees will continue to lift water and offer it to the sky. The sky will continue to listen and sometimes answer with cloud and rain. The ground will hold what it can and share the rest with roots and streams. In this balance, the weather near the forest becomes softer. Day after day, the same patient steps repeat until they become a lullaby. Rest inside that lullaby now. The leaf breathes, the cloud grows, the rain falls, the soil smiles, the night is kind.